while you're angry, don't sin. So the implication is that the anger isn't the sin. The anger can cause you to sin, but the anger isn't the sin. And then it says, do not let the sun go down in your anger. And so this is not necessarily talking about a romantic relationship. So it's not saying, don't go to bed angry because, I'm not going to bed with my neighbor. Mm-hmm. So it's not saying, oh, don't go to sleep. You got to stay up all night and work it out. It's saying, do not let the sun go down on your anger. It's basically saying there's a time limit. There's a time limit on your anger, but there's a time limit in where your anger can give the devil a foothold. So you can be angry. You can be angry because that person looked at you wrong. But if you're angry about it 5 months from now you've given the devil a lot of time to put thoughts in your head. Oh, they must have this and they're that. And so it says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. So a lot of times I hear that people saying that, that means you got to make up and you got to talk about it and you got to reconcile it. So it doesn't say do not let the sun go down on your disagreement. It doesn't say do not let the sun go down on your reconciliation. So there's other verses he says, leave your gift at the altar and reconcile. But this is saying do not let the sun go down on your anger. So that's you. Mm-hmm. That's not your relationship with the other person. So you can stop your anger even if the person is not there, even if you haven't discussed the issue. So it's saying don't let the sun go down. So it's saying don't stay angry. So this is talking about forgiveness. So at some point your anger, so it's not a sin to be angry, but at some point it turns into unforgiveness. So you can be angry and you can address the anger or you can address the issue, but at some point it becomes unforgiveness and then it's wrong. If you're angry about it 10 years from now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't talk about whether you were right, whether it was righteous anger, whether the other person did something wrong, was in the wrong. It's saying, we're supposed to forgive. We're supposed to forgive it. And nowhere does it talk about, well, maybe one place I found, that everywhere where it talks about anger, it talks about be slow to anger. It talks about don't stay angry. It never talks about the reason, like there being a good reason to be angry. In the church, we like to focus on the reason I'm angry. Oh, I'm angry because wretches. Oh, I'm angry because, but God doesn't focus on the reason why we're angry. He focuses on your response to the anger. He focuses on how quickly you become angry and how long you stay angry. So don't let the sun go down in your anger. It's not unless they did something sinful against you or unless they sinned against God or unless it's like, no, do not let the sun go down in your anger. And it's regardless of the reason you're angry. So it's not literally, you got to get over it that night, that day, but it's at some point of time you have to forgive. And it's not dependent on them. And so forgiveness means I'm not dependent on an apology. I'm not dependent on a confession. I'm not dependent on them saying that they recognize they were wrong. I'm not dependent on an explanation. If they need to do something for it, it's just like with God. Jesus died on the cross. We don't have to now, okay, now I got to not do this. Now I got to do this, sin. Now I got to live this way. It was Jesus' conditions that said it. So it's not dependent on them doing something, the forgiveness. Otherwise, it's not forgiveness. It's like I said, I'll forgive them if they apologize. I'll forgive them. If you go to forgive them and you're hoping that they're going to say, you know what, you're right. I was absolutely wrong in doing that. But they may say, yeah, no, I don't, that's not how I remember it. I think you're wrong. Then you get mad at it. It's like that means you didn't forgive. So forgiveness isn't dependent on their response to the forgiveness.
Unconditional, that's what you're saying.
Yeah. Otherwise, you didn't forgive. And it's not necessarily you got to necessarily forgive immediately. And it's not saying that it's easy. It's difficult, but some of the things you aren't going to be able to. Some of your triggers aren't going to be healed until you forgive. So as long as you're demanding something from the person, then it's up to them whether you heal. So you're leaving it in their hands. It's like, I'm going to hold this weight. I'm going to be unhealed. I'm going to have these emotional triggers until they decide that I won't. You know, you don't want to leave it up to them. You're like, I'm going to be angry and bitter and cruel to everybody until they say I'm sorry. So you don't want to give them the power. You don't want to give them the power for your emotions.
Right.
And and obviously it's a lot harder if it's something that's still going on. And I'm not saying it's easy if it was something in the past. Especially if it's something traumatic and a huge. It's not easy, but it's something that we can take. We want to continually take to God, and we may have to take it many times, and we may think that we've forgiven, and it comes back up. But something we want to aspire to do. We want to aspire to do is. Even if you ask God to help me forgive, that's a huge step in itself. If you because at some point you don't really want to, we don't want that. It's like they don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. I should be mad at them. I have the right to hold it against them because of what they did. But then you're going to, the parable of the torturer. You're going to be in the torture of the memory of it. And then the devil is going to have a foothold. The devil is going to be able to bring it up to you at any time. The devil is going to have a foothold in your life. Going to be able to bring that to your memory. Going to be able to trigger you. So you're giving the devil an opportunity, a foothold, an entryway into your life.